So now that the JBL Charge 5 is here, Party Boost is finally complete. So today we are going to break down JBL's Party Boost speaker lineup and see which one's right for you. We've got the JBL Clip 4, the Flip 5, the Charge 5, the Pulse 4, Xtreme 3, and the JBL Boombox 2. Because even though these are all just speakers, you will be better off with one over the other. Because besides sound, there's also battery life, ports, portability, and extra little features to take into consideration. But first, let's take pricing into consideration. The Clip 4 has a retail price of $70. The Flip 5 has a retail price of $120. The Charge 5 has a retail price of $180. The Pulse 4 has a retail price of $250. The Xtreme 3 has a retail price of $350. And the Boombox 2 has a retail price of $500. Now, JBL likes to put all of these speakers on sale on a regular basis, so I would definitely be on the lookout if I were you. But nonetheless, if you want to pick any of these speakers up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to learn more about any of these speakers, please watch through for reviews and versus videos, because we're only going to be going over their main differences. Now, design-wise, all of these speakers share the same characteristics and principles. The Flip 5, Charge 5, Xtreme 3, and Boombox 2 all have these exposed passive radiators on either side. They have a mostly fabric-wrapped body that's going to have no problem standing up to constant abuse, and all of these speakers are rocking a waterproof certification, so you don't have to worry about them getting wet. In general, all of JBL speakers are meant to be used at home, but if you want to take them on the go with you, either on a hike or camping, then any of these speakers will be able to keep up. However, there are two outliers here. First, there's the Clip 4, which is the smallest speaker here, and it has a built-in carabiner. So you could just clip this speaker onto your backpack and get going. So if you're looking for something ultra portable, then you might want to go with the Clip 4. But then there's the Pulse 4, which I would argue is the least portable Bluetooth speaker here for multiple reasons, and it's better off just used while at home. First, there's durability. Unlike all of these other speakers that have a fabric-wrapped body, the Pulse 4 has an acrylic body, which personally I would be careful with because you could scratch or crack this body if you're too rough with it. But then there's my personal experience with my first Pulse 4. Even though JBL claims that the Pulse 4 is IPX7 rated, making it waterproof, my first Pulse 4 died the first time it touched water. So personally, I wouldn't risk getting the Pulse 4 wet. But then there's also battery life. The Pulse 4 has an awesome looking light feature, and you've got multiple lighting modes to choose from. But it is a drain on battery life. So this is a speaker that's mostly going to live on the charger. But the main reason why the Pulse 4 is better off just used at home and not so much outdoors is because it has an upwards firing transducer. So this speaker is going to sound its best if its sound has a ceiling to bounce off of. Now, while we're on the topic of portability, I do want to address our two largest speakers here, the Xtreme 3 and the Boombox 2. Now, the Boombox 2 is easy enough to take on the go with you because it has a built-in carrying handle and it weighs in at 13 pounds. But after a while, the Boombox 2 does start to get heavy, especially if you've got a long hike ahead of you. Whereas the Xtreme 3 is a lot easier to take on the go with you because first off, it's much lighter, weighing in at 4.3 pounds, and it also has a shoulder strap. So thanks to this shoulder strap, long treks aren't as big of an issue with the Xtreme 3. And then there's also the fact that this shoulder strap has a built-in bottle opener, which I feel is a very nice touch. So if you're looking for a larger speaker to take on the go with you, personally, I would go with the Xtreme 3 because it's easier to carry and it has that built-in bottle opener. But if you're willing to put up with the Boombox 2, you will be rewarded with a much more dynamic sound. I don't know, personally, I just wish the Boombox 2 also had a shoulder strap. But now let's talk about tech specs. Regarding connectivity, all of these speakers have zero latency across the board when watching movies or videos on your phone, whether you're using an iPhone or an Android device. And all of these speakers, except for the Clip 4, can be connected to two devices at the same time so that you and a friend can both be DJing. Now, when it comes to battery life, if you're looking for the speakers here with the best stamina, then you're either going to want to go with the Charge 5 or the Xtreme 3. The Charge 5 has an advertised battery life of 20 hours, but real-world use with it playing at 80% volume, it's good for around 10 hours of playback time, whereas the Xtreme 3 has an advertised battery life of 15 hours. But real-world use with it playing at 80% volume, it's good for around 8 to 9 hours of playback time. Whereas with the Clip 4, Flip 5, and Boombox 2, they're all going to have no problem keeping up with you with a whole day's worth of listening. But the Charge 5 and Xtreme 3 do have slightly better stamina. But then there's the Pulse 4, whose battery life really depends on which lighting mode you're using and at what brightness. Because even though the Pulse 4 has an advertised battery life of 12 hours, for me, I can usually only get like 6 hours out of it. But this now leads us to the ports on these speakers. The Clip 4, Flip 5, Charge 5, Pulse 4, and Xtreme 3 all charge via a USB-C port, which is great. Whereas with the Boombox 2, it charges via an AC port and you get this beefy charging cable. Whereas with the Xtreme 3, you get a much sleeker charging cable. And also keep in mind, the Boombox 2, Xtreme 3, and Charge 5 all have a USB-A out port, so you can charge your own devices. But unfortunately, all of the smaller speakers here, like the Clip 4, Flip 5, Charge 5, and Pulse 4, no longer have an audio jack. So you can only use these smaller speakers wirelessly, because even though they have a USB-C port, their USB-C ports are strictly used for charging. So if you want or need an audio jack on your speaker because you want to be able to use them with a wired connection, you're either going to have to go with the Xtreme 3 or Boombox 2. However, one really cool thing about the Xtreme 3 is that you can either use its USB-C port to charge the speaker itself, or you can use it to charge your own devices. And I think this is a very nice touch because a lot of phones these days now come included with USB-C cables. Even iPhones now come included with USB-C cables. So I don't think USB-A is going to be as popular in the near future. But now let's talk about actually listening to music with these speakers. Obviously, the larger the speaker, the louder it's going to get, and that mostly applies here. Regarding speaker setups, the Clip 4 is rocking a single upward firing transducer and it's rated at 5 watts. The Flip 5 has a single frontward firing transducer, dual passive radiators that shoot out its sides, and it's rated at 20 watts. But then there's the Pulse 4, which is also rated at 20 watts, and it has a single transducer that shoots out the top, and it has a single passive radiator that shoots out the bottom. In all honesty, with the Pulse 4, you're mainly paying for looks and getting Flip 5 sound. Because for comparison, the Charge 5 has a frontward firing 30-watt woofer, a 10-watt tweeter, and you've got the dual passive radiators that shoot out its sides. And plainly said, if you're looking into getting one of these smaller speakers and you're mainly interested in sound, then you do want to go with the Charge 5 because thanks to its new speaker setup, the Charge 5 has a much better instrument separation than the smaller speakers because the tweeter handles the highs and the woofer handles the mids. But let me just show you.
Can I be your star tonight? You fill my soul with light the day we met. I don't wanna leave your side. Have me by your side when the sun sets. Let's be for eternity. We'll sail across the lights beyond the sky. I'll be with you eternally. I'm an addict for your love that keeps me high.
Tell 'em what your name is. Amplify for the speed house.
So, like you may have just seen, both the Flip 5 and Pulse 4 have a single transducer that's doing the majority of the work, and they do sound fairly narrow when compared to the Charge 5, which has a tweeter for the highs and a woofer for the mids, so it does sound more open. But now let's move on to the big boys. Both the Xtreme 3 and Boombox 2 are rocking a dual woofer, dual tweeter, and dual passive radiator setup. But the main difference here is going to be the outputs. The Boombox 2 has an output of 80 watts when it's plugged in, and when it's running off of its internal battery, it's rated at 60 watts. whereas the Xtreme 3 is rated at 50 watts while it's plugged in, but unfortunately I can't get an exact official number as to what its output is while it's running off of its internal battery. Nonetheless, the Xtreme 3 is a beast of a speaker all on its own, but you do get a performance bump out of it if you use it while it's plugged in, just like with the Boombox 2. But with all that being said, we're going to jump into a sound test. Just keep in mind, all of these speakers are playing off of their internal batteries.
Can I be your star tonight? You fill my soul with light the day we met. I don't wanna leave your side. Have me by your side when the sun sets. Let's leave for an eternity. We'll sail across the lights beyond the sky. I'll be with you eternally. I'm an addict for your love, it keeps me high.
Tell them what your name is. Amplify for the speed house. Left and right, left and right, left and right, left and go. Right, left,
Can I be your star tonight? You fill my soul with light the day we met. I don't wanna leave your side. Have me by your side when the sun sets. Let's leave for an eternity. We'll sail across the lights beyond the sky. I'll be with you eternally. I'm an addict for your love, it keeps me high.
Tell them what your name is. Amplify for the speed house. Left and right, left and right, left and right, left and go. Right,
So, like I said, for the most part, the larger the speaker, the louder and more bass you're going to get. Now first, I want to focus on the smaller speakers here, like the Flip 5, Charge 5, and Pulse 4. Like I mentioned earlier, since the Charge 5 has a woofer and a tweeter, it's able to sound noticeably more open than both the Flip 5 and Pulse 4 that have a single transducer that's doing the bulk of the work. Also, since the Charge 5 has a higher output than the Flip 5 and Pulse 4, it's able to get louder and have more bass. Now, the Flip 5 sounds fine for its size, but like I mentioned earlier, with the Pulse 4, you're mainly paying for its light feature and getting Flip 5 sound. But with the Pulse 4, since it has an upwards firing transducer, if you want to get the best sound out of it, you do want to use it while indoors so that its sound has a ceiling to bounce off of. But besides the Charge 5's superior speaker setup over the Flip 5 and Pulse 4, the Charge 5 also has a slightly different sound signature. The Charge 5 does sound a little brighter than both the Flip 5 and Pulse 4, meaning that it does like to put a slight emphasis on the mids and vocals. And the Xtreme 3 also has this slightly brighter sound signature as well. Now, after a while, you do get used to the slightly brighter sound signature, and a brighter sound signature does have its advantages because it makes your speakers sound louder, which is good for outdoor use. But unfortunately, since JBL still doesn't allow you to directly change their speakers' EQ, you are stuck with the Charge 5's and Xtreme 3's brighter sound signature. Now, when it comes to comparing the Xtreme 3 to the Boombox 2, the Boombox 2 does sound more balanced than the Xtreme 3. The Boombox 2 doesn't put as much of an emphasis on the vocals, and also since the Boombox 2 is larger and has a higher output, it gets louder and has more bass than the Xtreme 3. But like I mentioned earlier, if you want to get the most out of the Boombox 2, you want to use it while it's plugged in. When it's plugged in, it's going to get a little louder and you're going to get a little more bass. Now, you're also going to get a performance boost out of the Xtreme 3 if you use it while it's plugged in with its included charger. Now, this is a pretty big deal for the Xtreme 3 because not a lot of other speakers out there that charge via a USB-C port get you a performance boost when they're plugged in. But with all that being said, if you're looking into getting one of these smaller speakers, then you do want to go with the Charge 5, because thanks to its new speaker setup, the Charge 5 sounds noticeably more open than the Flip 5 and Pulse 4. The Charge 5 truly is a miniature Xtreme 3, thanks to the addition of that new tweeter. But if you want more sound than what the Charge 5 is able to offer you, then you do want to go with the Xtreme 3. But if you do decide to go with the Boombox 2 over the Xtreme 3, you're not just going to get a louder speaker with more bass. In my opinion, you are getting a more balanced sounding speaker because the Boombox 2 doesn't have that brighter sound signature that's found on the Charge 5 and Xtreme 3. But keep in mind, the Charge 5 and Xtreme 3 are newer than the Boombox 2, so I wouldn't be surprised if the Boombox 3, as well as the future Flip 6 and Pulse 5, all have brighter sound signatures to match the Charge 5 and Xtreme 3, and they'll probably have that new huge JBL logo on the front as well. But finally, let's talk about speaker pairing protocols. Like I've mentioned in the past, JBL does speaker pairing protocols very well. You just press one button on each speaker, they pair themselves up, you don't gotta open any other apps. You can pair up to 100 speakers together, which is overkill. If you have two of these same speakers, you can set them up to play in left and right stereo mode. But more importantly, it just works. But unfortunately, the JBL Clip 4 still doesn't have Party Boost, so you can't pair it up to any other speakers, period. And also keep in mind, you can only pair Party Boost speakers to other Party Boost speakers. So if you've got any older JBL speakers that are using JBL Connect Plus, like let's say an original Boombox, an Xtreme 2, a Flip 4, a Charge 4, a Charge 3, or a JBL Pulse 3, you're not going to be able to pair any of them up to any Party Boost speakers. Now, I know this isn't ideal, but Party Boost does have some performance improvements over JBL Connect Plus. Specifically, you can have a lot more range in between your speakers. And also for my Party Box owners, no, you can't pair any Party Boost speakers to any Party Boxes, which I do think is unfortunate, especially if you have one of the larger Party Boost speakers, like either an Xtreme 3 or Boombox 2. But now that the Party Boost family is finally complete, does that mean we're going to see a new speaker pairing protocol with the next JBL speaker to be released? Which personally I hope is a new Flip 6 with a tiny little tweeter. Personally, I hope that we don't see a new speaker pairing protocol with the next JBL speaker to be released, because when we went from JBL Connect Plus to Party Boost, it did look and feel like planned obsolescence, and the community really didn't like that. Personally, I would like to see JBL to continue to support Party Boost and to bring Party Boost to their Party Box speaker lineup. This way, we can pair multiple Party Boxes together and even pair them up to JBL's smaller speakers. And instead of forcing people to upgrade with a new speaker pairing protocol, you can incentivize them to upgrade with improved speaker setups like you did with the Charge 5, add new software features like an adjustable EQ, you can improve battery life, and maybe even introduce wireless charging. You could maybe even introduce reverse wireless charging. Well, ultimately, here's my breakdown of JBL's current speaker lineup. If you're looking for a small, ultra-portable Bluetooth speaker to take on the go with you, then the Clip 4 is a great option. It also makes a great little podcast machine. It gets decently loud for its size, but keep in mind, it can't be paired to any other speakers. But if you want something that's a little louder, that's still easy enough to take on the go with you, then the Flip 5 is a good upgrade. Now, if you're looking into getting a small or mid-sized speaker and you want the best sound, then you definitely want to go with the Charge 5. Thanks to its all-new speaker setup that now features a tweeter, the Charge 5 has noticeably better instrument separation than both the Flip 5 and Pulse 4. But if you're looking for a cool looking speaker for your bedroom, then you really can't go wrong with the Pulse 4. The Pulse 4 really does have the best looking light feature on the market right now. However, the Pulse 4 is strictly better used while at home because of its upward firing transducer. It's not as durable as these other speakers, and its real-world battery life isn't the greatest. But if you're looking for a larger speaker to constantly take on the go with you, then the Xtreme 3 is the best choice here. With the Xtreme 3, you're getting great sound in a very small and lightweight package with a decent real-world battery life. This is a speaker that's either going to be great at home or on a camping trip. But if you do want the louder speaker here with the most amount of bass, then you do want to go with the Boombox 2. But personally for me, I would rather mostly use the Boombox 2 at home and only occasionally take it on the go with me, because traveling with it isn't as easy as with the Xtreme 3. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit that like button and get subscribed. It helps out more than you realize. If you want to pick any of the products up mentioned in this video, those will be linked in the description down below, and you can also support the channel by checking out the merch store. But other than that, I'll catch you next time.